Okay, thank you. So welcome back to the stream, online audience and audience here at the webinar studio. So we have heard 5 very interesting presentations, and now we have time for discussion. Do we have our French connection there, our French gentleman online there, Jonah and Paul?
Yes, I'm online.
Okay, great.
Same
Perfect.
for me.
Technology is working perfect today. Great, thank you so much. So welcome back, Paul and Jonah and Markku, Kai and Tanya. And thank you so much for the online audience. We really have received a lot of very good and interesting questions. And we will start the discussion by taking these questions from the online audience. So I just put my glasses on so I can see the questions. So we start. I think, Paul, we start from you. It seems so. So who can join and sign the initiative and how? Is there a network for Per Mille initiative?
Yes,
Good question.
Very simple question, very simple answer. You can find all information on our website, www.4p1000 in figure.org, and there is a special place for joining. So who can join? Only country, organization, or business, not individual, unfortunately. And it's very simple. You have only 2 documents to fill: Excel sheet with your information for us to gather, and a document when the new organization who want, or the new country who want to join, can share our objective and also, of course, all our governance. So very simple, but if people cannot find the proper thing, they can join me on the mail secretariat@4p1000.org.
Thank you, Paul. So it does seem that you made a really good impression, as everybody wants to now join Per Mille. And we have so much enjoyed the Baltic Sea Action Group to be part of your network and the collaboration. Thank you so much. And then it seems, Tanya, that you have really a jackpot. There are a lot of questions for your presentation, so be prepared.
All right.
Fibers as organic fertilizers may fix nitrogen and impede plant growth. What about yield effects?
Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, the benefits for farmers are multiple. So the benefits fibers have in yield is it may increase the yield, it may increase the fertility of the soil, and in addition, it will lower the need for chemical fertilizers.
Thank you. Very clear answer. So why permanence 20 years whilst reduction on the cropland is 12 to 28% after 20 years?
It was actually in the presentation I mentioned that from the total carbon content from one fiber application, the slowly decaying carbon is from 12 to 28%. This variation is due to the fact that soil improvement products is one product line. So inside we have many different products that have different percentages of carbon content. So from one application, the slowly decaying carbon is the 12 to 28% percentage factor.
Okay, thank you. Very clear answer. And then we continue. Is the pulp waste used in carbon credits used in the industry? For example, do they incinerate the pulp for energy in the production of their products? Do you ensure that there isn't equivalent of carbon emitted in the replacement of pulp in industry?
Well, as I mentioned that the pulp and paper industry dispose of these side streams. So for them, they are not used as, they are incinerated, but not for the energy use. So actually these side streams contain about 70% water. And so to be able to incinerate the side streams, they must add another alternative fuel to actually be able to incinerate them. So the energy loss is not significant for the industry.
Okay, thank you. Again, very clear answer. Okay, so what is the relevant time frame to be able to prove the soil carbon accumulation on soil? So basically, how long from the baseline formulation the farmer can have carbon credits for sale by your experience? And I think it's Tanya for you again. Yes.
Well, we verify the carbon removals after the delivery and application of our fibers. So as I mentioned, on sale we have now the carbon removals from the 2020 applied fibers. So they were verified in 2021, meaning that after the year we can count all the deliveries that we have made to distinct farmers around Finland and then verify the carbon removals from them. Normally, fibers are applied to the same field in once every 5 years, so it's not an annual application of fibers. But in that sense, it is always the year after that we can verify that batch of fibers.
Thank you, Tanya. There are still two questions. So this is now in Finnish, but I translated. How did you determine the soil carbon store, the changes in the soil carbon and the carbon sort of offsets? So what is the carbon reference?
Yes, the YASO model, which is created and developed by the Finnish Meteorological Institute, estimates the amount of decay, the carbon decomposition percentage in the soil, and so the carbon removals have been developed in line with this model.
Okay, thank you. Again, very clear answer. So then. Soil improvement fibers from pulp and paper industry. What is the full volume potential of this waste stream to be turned into soil improvements? How much waste there is per 1 ton of produced pulp?
I would suppose that this is something that the pulp and paper industry does not want to reveal or share this information with us, but about 90% of side streams from the pulp and paper industry are still incinerated to this day in Finland. So we have a potential amount of side streams to utilize for recycling at the moment, and so a shortage in that supply will not surely take place soon.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And it was such an interesting case study, as we can see from so many questions, but you had such clear answers to all of those questions. Now we move on to Jonah. There is a question. So how do you introduce cover crops in the maize cropping system, in the maize rotation, in an economically viable way? Is it muted, Jonah? If you put the microphone on, please. Sorry. Thank you so much.
So in our area, most of the farmers will have a 2-year rotation where they will alternate corn and wheat. So we have a big period between the wheat harvest, which happens end of June, beginning of July, until the next spring, the following spring, where we have a potential to grow cover crops. So we on our farm and some of our growers even do 2 cover crops. So we have we've been doing for a few years. Right after the harvesting of the wheat, we'll put in a cover crop that is more suitable for the summer, which, depending on rainfall, can produce very high levels of biomass. We went up to 10 metric tons of biomass per hectare in 2 months, which is significant. And then we'll put in a second cover crop, which we'll implement in September. So usually it's mainly based on faba beans, which is a species that works well in our conditions, and which also obviously has the advantage that it's a legume which will be able to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere into the soil, which then helps the following crops even, because has an impact on the corn that will be planted right after, but also on the wheat, on the following wheat that will happen nearly 1 year later. And then we have some growers that have longer rotations, where there's always an opportunity. Generally, before corn, there's always an opportunity to put in a cover crop, so it doesn't really have an impact on the what we call the cash crops. It's just something we add in between two crops, where before the farmer would have just left a bare soil.
Thank you so much, Jonah. And few more questions. Very specific question about the satellites. So what satellites are used with this high resolution? Is it Copernicus or Sentinel satellite?
So it's the Sentinel satellite, which has the advantage that well, the imagery is free access, and also the recurrence, because it will fly over the whole globe every 3 days. So that means every 3 days we can have a measurement, which is very important in our model, because we want to be as close as possible. Well, we want to have a measurement that's very close to the date of destruction of the cover crops, and the Sentinel-based satellites are very good for that. That doesn't mean that in the future maybe we'll be able to implement other satellites in the model to have an even more regular and accurate estimation of the biomass that is produced.
Thank you so much. And then the other panelists, if you want to continue or add to the comments, please feel free. But then one very interesting question, Jonah, about the economics. So it was said that your approach is excellent from the online comment, but how to scale it up to cover all of the EU? And if farmers benefit from using these cover crops anyhow, so will we, the public, be overpaying? For example, in Finland, reduced tillage proved to be economically attractive even without the subsidy due to the reduced cost.
Yes, I mean, it's a good question, but what's important to note is that the use of cover crop is generally very positive for the farmer, but not so much short term. And short term, it's for many farmers more of a risk to implement cover crops, and it's a cost because you have to buy the seed for the cover crops, and so it's important in the first stage to help the farmers through financial incentives, but also with training, and also which we have also in our company, agronomists that know the subject, that have experience, and that can help the farmers make the right decisions in implementing the cover crops. And also the big challenge is in our case, to have also a good crop of corn, because if it has an impact on the cash crop, then generally it's not, as a whole, it's not beneficial for the farmer. And I mean, we think that there has to be a financial incentive to make the farmer realize that, well, to help him have a very intensive cover crop, which has a direct impact on the carbon that's stored, and so that the farmer treats his cover crop nearly like a cash crop. The financial incentives are important.
Thank you. Thank you. Does somebody want to comment the need for subsidies?
Yeah, this relates very much to how the Common Agricultural Policy is also designed. There is some overlap with the incentives that it provides, and some let's say discontinuity when it comes to these carbon sequestration targets. So I think that we need some revision of the Common Agricultural Policy to accommodate better the shift towards carbon farming, and perhaps also shift this. We need to discuss about an issue that is called double dipping, meaning that if we have subsidy from the Common Agricultural Policy and we have a possibility of selling credits to the market, so there are two sources of revenue, and the CAP policy should should be accommodated to this as well. So I think that we have a need to make reform of the.
I think Paul, if you can close the microphone still,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, we need to reform CAP policy to better accommodate this carbon farming. EU made a notification or what is it called, communication on sustainable carbon cycles, and gave very high emphasis on carbon farming there. But there are still no steps to revise policy accordingly. I think that there are lots to do when we redefine all incentives.
Thank you. And then Paul, you had a comment also, please.
Yes, I completely agree with what was said. Well, for us, there is something very important, is that the farmer need first of all to live from their production. I mean, the price paid for their production need to be fair and include the cost of production plus the living of the farmers. That's the first element, which is not negotiable. Then, on the top of that, if the farmer is doing through his practice or her practices some good action for the society, like storing carbon in the soil, then they should be paid for that. And as the professor just said, they could be paid or on the public money with, for instance, in Europe, the Common Agricultural Policy money, subsidy, or on the carbon market compensation. And this needs to be very clear. I would personally prefer that the farmers being paid partly by the public money for that service, because it's a service rendered to the whole society, then, but it's very clear on a small amount, to be honest with them, within the cap. And with the other one, we want to go further. They can receive some money from the compensation scheme from the private company, and then they could be higher, but it's all on the top of the price paid to the farmers and not included in the price as some of the actors want to propose to the farmers. This is not fair, and we need to be clear on that question.
Thank you so much, Paul. And Kai, you had a comment.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to comment on the threshold between the public subsidy and the market. That's maybe more Markus' territory. But I think the essence is in regarding the question of whether we are facing the risk of overpaying with some measure. I think Jonah pointed our attention to the essence that instead of worrying about this overpaying, we should ensure that we set the incentives in the way that it supports this long-term transition in agriculture and in farming practices, that and where the farmer applies these different measures in a conscious way with some kind of clear objectives to improve soil health or productivity or increase the green cover year round, so that these measures are part of a logical systemic shift in farming methods, and this way we support this agricultural transition and also climate policy in a way which benefits the society overall.
That's true. Thank you, Kai. And then Jonah, there is a question about the permanence of the carbon storages over time. How do you follow that? How do you tackle with this permanence issue?
So how we've worked out our model is, or at least that's the first step of how we've of our journey, if I can say so. So we're measuring the biomass, and then we've used literacy, so different studies that have been made around the world to convert that into CO2 that's permanently stored into the soil. And that's where we are now. And that's what I was explaining a bit earlier. The next steps would then be to add in some other parameters to take into account some other aspects. And we all know that soil tillage and also the temperatures, the weather, and the temperatures will increase mineralization, which means the carbon could be destocked. But at the minute, we're focusing on just improving versus previous practices by increasing the biomass produced, and that we convert that into long-term stored carbon based on what has been shown by previous studies.
Thank you. Does somebody want to comment on the permanence issue? Paul, please.
Thank you. But if there is another comment, of course, I don't want to monopolize the steps, the floor. Sorry, but I was just on that subject. It's true that most of the people that come on the market of the carbon just start thinking about what could be the permanence, how we can check that, and so. But it's very funny that they never ask that question when the carbon sequestration is proposed by a forest project. And a forest project is about the same problem. If you set a fire to a forest, the forest will disappear in few hours, and all the carbon store will not be stored anymore. So the permanence is it's a concept that only in human brain. I mean, it's just nothing is permanent. It's just a question of temporary. It depends the length of this temporary status. But I think we need to work and advocate for the fact that storing carbon in the soil is about the same kind of permanence as storing carbon in the forest. The only thing is that we need to stress is that the farmers need, when he applies some practices, he needs to stick to those practices for a long time. That's it. We know that if we plow a land where carbon was stored for 10 years or 5 years, then we can release all the carbon at once. But that's exactly the same that if you scratch matches somewhere in the forest and just burn it. So this question of permanence is important to be considered. The additionality is also a question very important, but no more than in other categories of storing carbon using the nature.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
yes.
I would like to add to this that yes, equally important, but that means that we should not neglect it. Our experience from the California emissions trading scheme, where they allow this voluntary project from forests, shows that the carbon leakage that comes out either from the released or failed projects and from the leakage through market is more than 70%. So we cannot build climate policy on an approach where we neglect this aspect. It's a different thing than to promote good farming methods, but climate policy must be rooted on permanence or the way how we handle it. There is no exception to this.
A clear comment. Actually, also in the chat there is a comment that avoiding leakages is crucial. So, as Markku said, there are so many questions online, but I think now we can continue this later. But now I would like to activate our audience here in our webinar studio. So please, the audience, do you have any questions? And you can come up here to post the question. So can you? Yes, please. Yes, thank you. If you can come here, so you can be part of the stream, so you can. We have more. Is that is perfect spot? Isn't it? Looking at yes, thank you so much.
Hello. Well, I don't know where to look there.
Yes, and present yourself and yes, please ask.
Hi everyone. My name is Niklas Caskell. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at Compensate. Compensate is an organization that works on the voluntary carbon market. I would have so many questions and comments, but I'll make it quite general because I hope that will then lead to further discussion.
Great.
When the value chain of the carbon credit was described in the very early, in the first presentation, I think something was missing. The value chain doesn't end when a credit is retired. It ends when the buyer makes a claim. And this is really crucial. And this relates to the integrity, the climate integrity of that credit. That integrity should be reflected in the claim that the buyer makes. If they make an offset claim, a climate action claim, a contribution claim if it's double counted under the Paris Agreement rules or so. So I think that's really, really crucial when we speak about carbon markets, is why are buyers buying these credits? If they are buying them to achieve net zero, I don't think these credits are doing the job they're not good for a net zero claim. Carbon neutrality, perhaps, if we apply the offset ratio that Markku has here suggested that we do. So I think we need to always keep in mind why the buyers are buying these credits. It's really crucial to incentivize soil farming or like carbon farming and all of that. But the carbon markets, if they're used as a tool to incentivize this, we need to keep in mind why buyers are buying these carbon credits and make sure that the claims they make are truthful. Thank you.
Thank you. Very clear question. And maybe so who wants to tackle first?
Well,
Kai?
maybe I just comment because it was referring to what I presented. I agree absolutely, and this is the part of the climate policy and issue where we should be really considerate of the permanence and priority of emission reductions and secondarity of these offsets and compensations. So yes, from climate policy perspective, absolutely agree.
Do you want to?
Paul or Markku want to comment?
Markku or Jonah?
Yeah, I agree.
Do you agree? Yeah. Okay, what about Jonah? Actually, I could continue because there was a question about how the consumers, are they willing, do they want to promote these issues? The buyers there, buyers of popcorn.
Yes, so obviously it depends, but it's becoming more and more of a topic. So obviously every country has more or less sensitivity to that subject, but we can see that that the buyers are more and more concerned about this, and they want to they want to find ways to have a more sustainable product and to be able to communicate about it. So one thing I didn't mention, but what we're looking into is how can our customers make sure that they have a fair tool and how can I say that, how they can make sure that they can communicate that in a way where the consumer doesn't see that as another label. I mean, there's so many labels now available on the market, which the consumer is lost in front of all these labels. And so we're looking into seeing how we can, for example, use blockchain technology to make that direct link from pretty much the field and the farmer to the package of popcorn. So how we could imagine that is that because everything will be pretty much automized, we could imagine that the consumer will scan his package and he will see all the details about his product, and he would be even able to see, so this package has been made with corn that came from this field, which has stored that amount of carbon.
Okay.
And so that's, again, how we're trying to make the link between the farmer and the consumer using technology. So we're still a long way from that, but we believe that this can help the consumer actually believe in what he's buying, being able to have that direct link through a technology like blockchain.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Now we would have so much to discuss, but not so much time anymore. So I ask you to keep the answers quite short and concise, so we have more time for questions. Paul, please.
Yes, I just want to add something on the last point, the relation with the consumer, because the consumer needs to be informed of what he's purchasing. We had a discussion yesterday during the World Living Soil Forum in Arles about one of the propositions made by the Technical Institute of Organic Agriculture in France, just to build up something which is called Planet Score, It's a kind of inclusive label. We give a note between A to E to product, including all aspects of the product. If it's a vegetable product, where it come from, how it was cultivated, how much carbon it can store, and so on. If it's an animal product, where how the animal were bred, how they were fed, what kind of product they were fed, if it's coming from Brazil or if it's coming from local production for cereals. So this is very interesting, and we will maybe develop a discussion and another webinar on that subject. But I advise you to have a look to that. It's called Planet Score.
Great, thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. And then we continue with the questions from the webinar audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mariana Suorsa, and I come from the Ministry of Agriculture or Forestry of Finland. This is more maybe a comment, but Laura mentioned the Catch-the-Carbon in the opening words. So a few words about that. So we are running a Catch-the-Carbon climate package, which is part of the Finnish governmental program. And currently we have more than 100 research, development and innovation projects in the package. And when we had the last application round, we allocated quite significant amount of money to study and development carbon markets in Finland. So the science and research are really important to assess the economic base for the markets, both when it comes to national economy and to a single farmer and a farm. And also our projects are developing the common rules for the carbon market, which is really important to ensure the reliability and transparency of the carbon markets. And we have already discussed about natural sciences and kind of agricultural sciences and economics, but also I would like to remind that this really needs some multidisciplinary research. So in our Catch-the-Carbon projects, we also have behavioral scientists, psychologists who are studying what makes a farmer to be a carbon farmer. It's not only about economics, but it's also something that we can affect with our behavior or the farmer's behavior. So multidisciplinary research is needed, and that is what we are supporting.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was really, really good comments, and thank you for. It's great that we have a big emphasis in the government program in Finland on the Catch-the-Carbon theme, and that we can now continue. So now some projects end, some are continuing. We have new projects starting, and I can tell now the online audience that we here at the webinar studio, we continue with lunch, and we can continue discussion here with the new projects. So we also, the Politics Action Group we typically work as a matchmaker and bringing different organizations and projects together. So one sort of aim for today's webinar is also to bring all the projects together and continue the discussion, because we do need so many different multi-disciplines, different projects to come together to tackle the problems. And is there any more? No comments here, but are there any more questions from the audience, please?
Hello, Kirsi Tiusanen from ST1. I have two questions actually. For Jonah, I would like to ask that are you still the sole incentivizer for the carbon credits that you produce in your projects? And are you planning to send them out there to carbon market? Or are you already doing that? And then I have also another question for Markku, that have you tried to put into the economic models those co-benefits that you asked?
Thank you.
Those are my questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very clear questions. And then Jonah, please.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a good question which we ask ourselves regularly. So at the minute, we haven't really got any kind of carbon initiative where we feel like we could fit in for different reasons. Some are because we're not looking at a global farmers approach, because we only have one crop at the farmers. Also, there's some local initiatives also, well, national French initiatives, which are appearing. There we have a problem because they're not recognized on the export market. So that's another topic. Well, we're not going to get into that now, but that's also a problem because there's a lot of initiatives happening elsewhere. How do we, for companies like us, for supply chains that are quite diverse and I mean geographically, how do we solve that problem? So at the minute, what we're looking into is the first step is to neutralize the carbon emissions from our factory through the carbon stored at our farmers that we pay, obviously. So we started this year doing a carbon footprint analysis of the factory. So again, I'm not going to get into the details, but it's also an interesting topic because what we see is that these models are based on a lot of averages and theoretical emissions per type of products. And I mean, there's a huge amount of work still to be done to have reliable and accurate measurements of carbon emissions and storages. And to conclude, we might one day, when we find a model that works for us, get into a official carbon credit market, but we're not there yet.
Okay, thank you, Jonah. And then Marco, you remember the question?
Yeah,
Yes?
I do.
Yeah.
Sister. Okay, yes, we have tried to include these water quality benefits in there from the profitability angle for the farmer, and it's obvious that if somebody pays for that also, it increases the profitability for carbon farming. Including this soil biodiversity or underground biodiversity is more challenging. We are trying to currently to determine the let's say the operative value of microbial biodiversity through the improved soil productivity. And once we get this done, then we can try to assess what sort of value added that would provide also to carbon credits. But this we haven't done. But it's obvious. In both cases, they increase the profitability of carbon farming. And if there is a buyer who is willing to pay for all benefits, of course, then the price of carbon credits would increase and it would be more beneficial, yes.
Thank you. That was really good question. I'm happy to collaborate in this STN MULTA project that is still continuing 3 years and hopefully, but maybe we have to apply for some more funding as always.
More than likely.
So a message to funders. It would be a very important topic to continue. Also, I think EU-wide and globally, a very, very crucial topic to combine these climate biodiversity issues especially, but not easy.
Not easy.
Not easy. But we will get there. Okay, more questions from the audience. There's a lot of now discussion. We don't have so many minutes left, but what I liked about Marianne's comment about this multidisciplinarity and about the psychology and the behavior and the farmer perspective. We do have one speaker, farmer, and we do have some in the audience. So would there be a willing farmer to comment on this? How do we get the farmers with us in this work?
Well, I think it's very interesting to hear that the government has also taken into account that the psychology of these decisions is important. And in my opinion, I think that in many different practices, if we think about organic farming, to many farmers, when you have a profession that you have maybe done for many years, 30 years or less, but you have a profession that you want to be able to improve your skills as well. taking on new practices and taking on new methods that have an incentive behind them or that have multiple benefits for your productivity, it is also about sort of increasing the passion towards your profession, increasing the skills that you have in your profession, as you have in any other profession as well. You want to be challenged and find new skills in that profession. And so I think it is extremely important that we have Carbon Action Group and platforms such as these to bring together people, to educate farmers, and to sort of share the knowledge that we have together, and in that way sort of share the education and the know-how in the field.
Thank you.
If I may add to
Yes,
this,
please.
the EU Commission has identified 4 obstacles for promoting carbon farming, and the first has been discussed here. It's a financial burden, and it relates to compensation that we can receive from the credits. The second relates to psychology, and it's a lack of trust. Lack of trust within the market, or within the buyers, and within the suppliers, and the audience, which refers to that okay, this should be transparent. We need clear rules. We need everything as transparent as possible. And the third obstacle is this monitoring, reporting, and verification, which there's lots of research going on that. And the fourth relates very much to what Tanya said, and it's the advisory services and the professional identity of farmers. And winning these is one of these 4 obstacles, is one big thing for all of us. And I think that today we have done some work on this in any case.
That's true.
Yeah.
Can I comment
Yes, Tanya,
a
please.
bit more
Okay.
on the, before we talked about the overlapping incentives, and I think also we have to keep in mind that when you want to incentivize farmers to adopt these practices, it is also important to have the overlapping in the sense that we need to have the benefits always have to exceed the disadvantages or the costs in farming. So if you think about productivity is one benefit that you can achieve from carbon farming, but then you can have the cap support, the incentive from that, or you can have the voluntary carbon market. So even though it is important to see the boundaries and set the sort of different distances between the overlapping, it is also important to realize that sometimes different incentives are needed to form a whole picture for the farmer as well.
Thank you so much. I think now we take a final comment from the audience, because I was looking, we don't have many minutes left, so please.
Hello, my name is Juuso Jona. I'm a carbon farmer and educator, and also participating in this LIFE project. And I totally agree with all the participants here today. I'd like to add that a paradigm shift in agriculture, in many cases, is about a mindset shift. And to adapt to carbon farming practices are quite a low-hanging fruit for farmers. I mean, many times they don't need high investments, but a mindset shift. But farmer needs incentives and encouraging and knowledge. And we do have one elephant in the room also today, which is CAP subsidies, which are mainly based on their direct subsidies, area-based, and they are passivizing farmers, at least me, to do anything else than to lift the subsidies. But what I like from the example of the Natha and Johan is that you have this result-based approach, which is also encouraged by EU Commission for this incoming cap period, but it's neglected, at least in Finland. And that's what we should add. And we are also doing carbon action that try to measure and incentivize and motivate farmer by this result-based approach. And that's what's needed. And final comment is that the knowledge is one of the limiting factors among farmers. And that needs to work a lot to educate advisors and to have enough resources, I mean money, for advisory. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think now we have to end this webinar. I will give some take-home messages, but we are running out of time. I think we could continue. Excellent comments. Thank you, Juuso. And we could continue. I'm sure you would all like the comments, but it's good maybe to start paying for the results. I guess that was to conclude. But now, I'm sorry to say that we have to start ending this very lively discussion. And thank you so much for the audience online and for all the speakers and organizers and the audience here in the webinar studio for the very lively webinar.